All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here today on this freezing cold morning. I would like to call the February 4th, 2023 Scituate School Committee meeting to order. We will, oh, I don't see Peter on actually. I'll call both Peter's on now to both. All right, we will call the February 4th, 2023 Scituate School Committee meeting budget workshop to order at 9 a.m. The Scituate School Committee is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner. Even when there is disagreement, we value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcomed and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. We are on Zoom, and also, as usual, you can email me at nbradolini@cit.org with any questions at all. All right. Without further ado, we'll jump right into the FY 2024 budget workshop. Superintendent Burkett.
Good morning, everyone. School committee, our staff that's here. I appreciate that. Thank you, and good morning to our audience. I'm excited to be here today to share some really good news about our budget. And first of all, say that it's been a collaborative effort. We'll get into that in a little more detail on the process we use to come to these numbers that reflect our values and vision in support for our children. I think what you'll see here is that all money is tied back eventually to student learning and success. And that's the whole goal. So I'll be working today with Dr. Dutch, our business and finance director, and we found some back and forth together. We'll slow down after each slide for any questions. And for those folks out there, there'll be another, this is a workshop, which we go into the granular details of pretty much line by line of our entire budget. And then on Monday, we share it again with the school committee. People have time to digest, committee to ask further questions on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we'll be presenting this to the select board at their meeting. And I think the following week, I don't have the date, to the advisory committee as well, all before heading to town meeting for approval.
Next Monday, after we do the public hearing, following the school committee.
Right. So the timing in, thanks, Bob, on February 13th, that's full committee meeting, there'll be a vote on the budget. Okay, so the first two slides are just a reflection of the two pillars that have been here for 3 years that we've built a lot of what we do on, and certainly, as I said, the budget should reflect these values. And just to give you an overarching feel for that, the culture of collaboration is first and foremost what it says. Just go back to our culture of collaboration is just partnerships, working together, unifying, especially coming out of pandemic. We want to emphasize our partnerships with our staff, with our students, with our families, with outside partners, institutions, and with our community for sure, and families. And one of the mottos we have there is that everyone has a seat at the table, is treated with respect, and is treated fairly and supported. And we hope to show you that this budget reflects that. The second core value is a culture of excellence, which is broken down into academic and personal. And we'll be talking there about our academic goals and how the monies we support this year tie into that, as well as the personal piece, which is talks a little bit about social emotional learning and supports for our entire school community. Okay, so breaking this down and giving a little bit of examples of what we'll see today in reflected in the budget is a commitment to facilities. We've got a lot going on. Got a lot going on, and if a little history, when we inherited the budget 3 years ago, there was no monies at all, zero line item budgets for facilities, relying entirely on the town after the fact when things break or needs to be fixed. And we committed to a model where not only should things be fixed with monies that we have readily available and budgeted for, prepared for, but also to enhance our facilities. And with the new school potentially in the works, we want to make sure that the surrounding schools that are in existence are kept and maintained, but also aligned with new innovative ideas in education and are allowed to adapt accordingly. And that money allows us to do that. Some examples. The Kobe Cutler Center is going on right now. That's the fitness center at the end of the hall here in the gym. If you get a chance, if you're here today and have a chance to walk down there, you'll see that the equipment is in the hallway because we are putting in a beautiful new floor, rubberized floor that's safe and secure for the athletes. Also, the walls will be painted. There'll be a giant S on the floor mats in there. So, you know, it's tribute to Kobe and the Cutler family and respect to them that this should be a high quality fitness center matching any that are out there in the community. We want the best for our kids. So that's one example of things we're doing. You came in today, you saw the beautiful blue paint on the exterior that used to be green. It is noticeable, and hopefully Pete's listening somewhere. Mr. Gates was a big advocate of that. He's on there, okay. And you know, and another thing about this monies as well is that, you know, when we came on board, I just remember the first summer and then the summer after that, that our PTO and family members were out landscaping our grounds. And although that's noble and appreciated, we felt that that should be something we can take care of. And because our community members and parents do so much other things, that physical labor shouldn't be one of them. So we use that money to hire a professional landscaper this year to beautify our schools. And that's just having pride and passion in your buildings. And so not only do we want them looking great on the inside, we want them looking beautiful and welcoming on the outside. So those are some things we've done. In that budget has been doubled. It started off with $125,000 2 years ago. It's now $250,000. So long story short, we will be maintaining that line item for $250,000 in this budget. One last thing. I mentioned all those new things. Also frontline things like something freezes up today. HVAC goes wrong. Again, we have that money to get that fixed right away and not have to go through a lot of red tape to do that. So that's really helped the learning for our kids and staff who are directly impacted by those things, but they inevitably do happen. Second one is the continued increases in town support. You know, this is a process that involves the financial forecast, which Bob will talk about in a little bit, which is collaboration with our leadership team, representation of the school committee, Mr. Gates, Dr. Dutch and I, and town administrator, town members, town finance director, and a few other folks that, you know, really spend a lot of time and look at the detailed numbers and work together. It's one of the few communities that I know that have this formula to come up with this budget, so that everybody knows ahead of time who's getting what, that it's divvied up appropriately and responsibly, keeping in mind taxpayers and the cost to the town and what we are supporting. So that's a great process. And the last one, teamwork with bargaining units. We just finished up last year bargaining with all of our units. We're wrapping one more up, but they're all in good shape. But I did want to point out that this does impact us financially because it impacts COLA increases for our unions, which have to be accounted for. But more importantly, back to the children, a lot of these all of these bargaining negotiations were healthy. They were all with kids in mind, and the end results were a vision of moving our district forward and working together collaboratively. One example I can give you in the teachers union, we did interest-based bargaining IBB it's called. We had an attorney that came in that facilitated that work. It's inherently a lot longer, but it's a wonderful process where you work together on issues instead of butting heads on, we want this, we want that, digging in. And it really worked out wonderfully. It's probably one of the best negotiations I've ever been involved in. Very collegial, very respectful, and we got a lot done. So hopefully you're enjoying some of the benefits of that. One example is the office hours, which the teachers agreed to try and pilot this year. And from all reports I have back, that's working wonderfully. We're assessing that. We're getting feedback. We'll be doing a thought exchange on that to improve it. And hopefully likely see that in the years to come so that there's communication home with families more regularly. So next slide, Bob. So culture of excellence. Last year we increased the budget, I think approximately $300,000, which is obviously significant. And we had an additional $300,000 that we committed to Vanessa monies for the new reading program. And so as we work with our department heads and principals and central office team and Driscoll, we're also improving some practices that may have been neglected. And one thing I think you'll see stand out here is textbooks and our supply lines. And a lot of that will come from here that I think that's been neglected in the past, and that students are using, and staff are using outdated textbooks that aren't sufficient for their needs in the evolving curriculum. And so that our commitment is to establishing a cycle where each year a department in need will get those for our kids. They'll be updated. With a few short years, we'll have all kids with appropriate books and updated books, and we'll have a plan, 5-year plan out for replacement of those, so we'll never be put in this situation again. And there's also some exciting benchmarking assessment ideas that Driscoll and maybe some of the department chairs will talk about. One thing that's not uncommon in middle and high schools is not having access to benchmarking. We know we have it at the elementary schools with literacy and math 3 times a year, beginning and end. We have Excel at the middle school. It's okay. It's not ideal. So you'll see now that we're committing to some Lexile scoring opportunity data, which is a very core component of student learning for the middle and high school. It's a great investment. So again, a huge increase last year. I don't have the percentage, but I know it was probably over 100% last year, another 113% this year. We'll be excited to get into the details of that today. Increased staffing. This was something that was not on there last year, as there wasn't the need. I want folks to know that process of looking at staffing is very comprehensive. We go class by class, school by school, compare schools to schools, looking at class size. And I know it's a hot topic, and we base that on student need. We have some ballpark numbers, and we never commit to a number because there's flexibility within that, with the highest priority on the lowest class sizes being in our K-3 classrooms. That's when students learn to read and write, and their social skills are developed. So that's where a lot of our energies will go. And the district, our class sizes are decent anyways, but some of the staffing you'll see this year will correlate with the elementary schools, but also some social emotional commitments as well, as we continue to look at best serving our students with those needs, and all students actually. And that ties into the next one, additional support for SEL. There's some staff additions there that will be supporting that. There's also some partnerships with outside groups that can support our students proactively, something that we've been doing reactively in the past, and we'll be one of the first school districts in South Shore, maybe the state, to commit to supporting those kids through transportation. And we'll get into that in a little more detail later. And another exciting thing, the increase in support for our cybersecurity. You may have read about some ransomware attacks on schools recently, and the impact is devastating for schools. It's costly. It's scary because people out there can get access to our important, secure information, and nobody wants to feel that way or think that their children's or our staff's information can be hacked and accessed. So we've worked with the town in partnership with them. They're doing the same thing, but I wanted to, thank our tech team working on this, and we'll get to a little bit of detail. And Bob will also share, that isn't on this slide, but we've listened to the committee on some things that you'd like to see included and incorporated in our community in this budget slide deck that was not in past ones. We'll get to those in one. So, is a whole list of technologies that we ordered that was kind of spread out through, so you couldn't see it. We're gonna have it on one slide so you can see, and it will include what we're doing. So two-factor authentication is a simple one we're doing. We're also doing some other things that we feel very safe and secure with all our technology in the district with these enhancements that we're investing in. So the process, start to finish, it's the first thing looks at what we had in FY23. What we take a deep dive and analysis of that. Okay, how were our estimates there? Were they close? Were they off? It's not a perfect science. What things went up, what went down. So we dive into that, and then we base that and those assumptions on the new budget information, which is worked on through the process that I mentioned with the financial forecasting committee. What are we getting? And then kind of merge those two into what do we need? And we start off with what our needs and wants are. We start to break those down and prioritize those at the classroom level. We talk to our teachers about all teachers are invested in this process. They send their request to the principals. And I know Mr. Long had asked last year, which was a very relative question. Could we get a list of what we say no to at that teacher level for supplies and things like that? And we're proud to say this year that was our first commitment, that anything that the teachers asked for supplies was supported in this budget. So that we don't want teachers going out buying pens and markers and their own paper and things like that. And so that is completely supported. And we want to be a district that can say, our teachers have everything they need to be successful, because we want them to be focused on teaching and learning for kids. So after those needs are asked for and determined, we find out through the financial forecasts, what revenue we have available, and then we sit down and then go through fine-tune working with our cost center folks, our department chairs and coordinators, work with Driscoll and district administrators. Our AD is involved in that process. Anybody that has a cost center, central office team, and then we meet and we break down and justify all requests and priorities and go from there. It's a very collaborative process and a pretty lengthy one. Then the final cost center requests from those conversations are developed, start to formulate now. We then sit down, or did sit down in this case, with the finance subcommittee of the school committee. Thank Mr. Long and Mr. Gates for that. They had some good questions, some good input. So that was added to the process and the document in front of us today to give us input. And then today's budget workshop, and public hearing on Monday, and the school committee approval of the budget, town presentations I mentioned Tuesday, select board, and then the week after advisory, and then we take it to town meeting once approved by the school committee. I'll pause there. Any questions so far? Okay, so now we'll get into the actual budget, and I'll turn it over to Bob.
So just wanted to give you a treetop view of where the money goes. You can see that 55% of our budget goes to general education, 28% goes to special ed, and then smaller amounts to each of the other cost centers that are listed there. And I will read each of those. And then the increase amount this year and where those funds are going, so you can see where we are spending the increased revenue as a percentage, and the bulk of it is as a percentage, not dollar value, but as a percentage, is going to technology and then transportation. And we'll explain for you'll see why that increase as a percentage is happening in transportation. Keep in mind, transportation is about $1 million of our $45 million budget, so it doesn't take a lot to make that percentage jump out like that. And then similarly for the other areas, it's pretty equitable across the board. Just a quick comparison of FY23 versus what we've proposed for FY24. You can see that last year, well, this year actually, 81% of our expenditures are on salaries, 11% were on facilities and operations, and then 8% goes to out-of-district expenses. For FY24, you can see the switch, 2% less going to salaries and 2% more going to facilities and operations. And the bulk of that is you'll find is in the area of curriculum, providing teachers with the resources that they've asked for and that they need to be successful and to help our students. Mr. Burke, anything you want to add there?
No, and just, well, the salaries piece too is we've had some turnover with retirements in the last few years. Typically when you hire, there may be some savings there because folks come in not always at the top steps, so it's retires at the top steps. There's a little bit of that. So it's not, what folks to know, it's not directly, there's no correlation between cuts and staffing or anything like that. We're actually adding staffing. So it's more of the financial, the money, the actual dollars.
Okay, so we're going to get into the details within each of the cost centers, and we'll start with the elementary schools. So Cushing, the two highlights that we want to draw your attention to are an additional first grade teacher and an additional special education teacher. This is based on a request that was made at the school and certainly determined to be a need, with the focus being looking at class sizes and wanting to make sure that we address those issues. We have currently 4 kindergarten classes, and those students are going up to first grade, so we'll need to maintain that as we move forward. I just want to draw your attention to what you'll see on each slide and provide some explanation. And again, this is as a result of a request of the committee as well as the select board. So we've historically just given you 2 years of data, the FY23 and the previous year and the proposed year. Now we have 3 years worth of data, one being actual and then what was budgeted for this year. We don't know what the actual expenditure is yet until we're done with the year. And then the proposed both for FTEs and dollars. If there are blanks, that blanks are there because there is only one person in that department, and we prefer not to put an individual salary out there because those positions are people, and while public information, you can request it. We didn't feel it appropriate to put it out there in this presentation. So again, I just draw your attention to the additional staff in the first grade position and the additional special ed teacher. I don't know if you have questions.
Elaborate a little.
Or Bill will speak to that.
So last year we had a surge, if you recall, right before school started in enrollment in the kindergarten. Kindergarten is a little bit more unpredictable, right? We're doing our signups as early as possible. Next few weeks, I guess, but the total numbers, the dust doesn't clear until pretty much midway through the summer, and we noticed we had class sizes of about 24, 25 at Cushing. back to our commitment on for kindergarten that wasn't acceptable to us, and looking at the needs of the kids and the supports first. As we mentioned, it's the number, and then that gets our attention, and we dive in deeper. And we made the commitment of adding a teacher there. So the numbers went down to 16, 17, much more manageable, especially in those early grades. So that was a 1-year hire, just to kind of see how things shake out with kindergarten. People come and go. Those numbers have seemed to remain constant, so that an additional teacher will remain full-time, which is a good thing for our kids. And it's similarly with the additional special ed teacher, we adding a class. We had more need there for special education services for our children, and so that teacher will be also kept and added to the roster of pushing for next year. And just for general conversations about, because I know this was a topic last year about class size and such, and we have some numbers up here today, and folks are saying, well, why didn't we get, if some schools aren't getting one? This is a perfect example. Is if we have to shift money, it's a unique thing about an educational budget. The governor hasn't even sent out her budget yet, and we're just kind of preparing. So the budget in February is not always the budget in May, June. So if we see shifts in class sizes and needs of students for any grade level, we always have the opportunity to add or transition teachers to where they're best needed. So I want the community to know that that is a commitment. These are ones that are glaring and obvious right now. If others can come up and persist, that's always an opportunity, even in August, if we have to. We build in that flexibility.
So, well, the kindergarten registration just starting now. You don't have technically any data on that grade. So, Cushing kindergarten could be 3 sessions or 4 or at any school. So any of the kindergartens are sort of still up in the air, but that larger first grade class.
Correct.
So you could technically
that's a
have
known versus unknown. Yeah, or any school, if we get a huge influx that moves us to add a section because we get 10 or 15 more kids than we anticipated, then we're going to have to go back and look and take monies from somewhere else to make that happen.
Is that on? Yeah, good. No. This is great, and I love this conversation. I love that you're all listening and taking feedback and strengthening the reporting. I think Superintendent Burkett, one thing I would just ask is, as the governor releases her budget, as things progress, like figuring out, and you do this already so well, like what's the communication plan? Like how much can you let the parents know that we're seeing this trend and just be prepared, right? Because a lot of this is just, managing our expectations as parents. So yeah, just thinking about communication.
I love that. Thank you. And that's something we really haven't done, because after, pretty much March or April, we just wait for town meetings. So I think with our focus this year on communication, having a mechanism now to get things out is easier. That's things that we can share, certainly, to add to our, it would be a positive thing and help the community. So thank you.
Yeah, to double down on that, I think just historically for Scituate parents, class size has always been arguably the top kind of value.
Well, I think it's just an opportunity to continue to educate us to say, oh, the governor said this, so this is a possible implication, right? It doesn't mean you're doing it, but just to keep us aware of how you're making your decisions. I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And even a good example is the free lunch.
Yeah.
Which may end in March, may not if she's working on getting money now. So that'll probably be the next. That's a perfect example of giving people a heads up of what's happening, and that whether that becomes Massachusetts law for another year. That's one example. But additional monies or shortages, I think updating the public on that in general is educational and helpful. Yep. Done.
Okay. The next slide are the supplies that were requested within each building. And again, you've got a little more data than you've had historically. I just want to explain why it is 2019 and then jumps to 2022. 2019 was the last pre-pandemic year where the numbers were legitimate and represented what was actually spent in a non-COVID year. And until we got to FY22, which there were still some COVID expenditures, but it was closer to normal than FY20 and FY21. And then you've got the budgeted amount and then what was requested. And in almost every case, with one or two exceptions, everything that was requested, actually only one exception that I can recall, everything has been approved in all of the schools. I've highlighted in red those things that are significantly different next year versus this year. You can see two areas within mathematics and reading, and I'll let Heidi explain the why, and then you're certainly welcome to ask any questions.
So nice of you, Bob. Why you see those jumps? Because we have to have new setups for additional classes. We want to make sure we made a commitment to ensuring that every single student has the same core resources. And I do want to clarify the actual line that says textbook. That doesn't mean we're giving everyone a physical hard copy textbook. That's part of some of these, but it's also the we're a one-to-one district, so we need access to one-to-one electronic textbooks, which doesn't look like a regular textbook. So whatever those core resources are, I wish the state changed their line. It's the core curriculum resources that everyone receives. So when you see some jumps in that, it's because we know we need additional supplies for servicing students. That looks a little bit different at each school. And I want to thank Megan and Heather, who are wonderful watchers of our supplies to make sure that we are getting the best possible, but we need new items.
Questions on this slide from anyone? Okay. Go on to Hatherley. So here there aren't too many significant changes. The one item that you do see is that there is an increase in the speech and language pathologists line there. They had a couple of different partial FTEs, and they will have 2 full-time positions in the school for next year at Hatherley. Other than that, you can see the total increase is minimal, 0.8 less than 1% in total expense. So certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have there. And again, you've got more detail in your book on each of these. Okay, move on to supplies for Hatherley. Again, there isn't anything that came up in red in this case. There are a few increases again in reading text and reading supplies, decrease in science supplies. And again, math text is up a little bit. So certainly, you know, again, you'll see we're investing in materials for students and for teachers to use in educating their students. Is there any questions there?
So did Adam move the special?
Hatherley is transitioning that position into the SLP position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jenkins, again, there are no additions that are here, and there you can see their bottom line has gone down by 0.24%. The FTEs across the board are pretty similar. Again, I don't know if there are questions here. There are some paras that, you see a decrease there, and simply someone has a question, Mr. Barquette wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I do. Something again, I think we've added this year for more transparency, is the FTEs. You might see a decrease here or there. That's our entire staff. That includes teachers, but paraprofessionals, because something that we did this year was Dr. Bobart met with all of the principals and did a deep dive in all of our students on IEPs and their needs, make sure they were accurate, and then where those students were going next year. For example, if there's a number of students moving from the 5th grade up to Gates, into the Gates program from the ILC or POC, for example, and a one-on-one para was there, that para may go with them. If the LCs get less kids or the GEMS programs, they wouldn't need those paraprofessionals. They may move. So there's some movement there. We're just kind of keeping an eye on that to be more efficient with where people are. But those things are subject to change, and a lot of that is internal. And again, it's January now, so we don't want our staff to look at this and say, oh, we're losing teachers, or where are they going? We don't want that to happen. This is just our estimates right now, and we're always back to the kids. Where are the student needs, and how can we match our staffing best to meet the student needs? So that, again, is subject to change on needs of our kids come spring into May. But it won't impact the budget.
Are you surprised by the stability of the staffing numbers? That it's not really varying very much
Overall?
Yeah.
I
mean, given what we've been talking about in terms of change and growth experience.
Yeah, I think, no, I'm not surprised. I think we've been adding them as we need them.
Okay.
And I think, kind of like back in the textbooks last year, we didn't have any, but that was to tighten our belts to make we made the budget. This year, it always goes back to the student need. We said, okay, see, there's a BCBA addition, social emotional, the kids, class size are decent across the district, so that hasn't changed. So I think we're, and we were well staffed. We're, for elementary schools, for example, I don't know of any other district, not many, that have an adjustment counselor and a school psychologist in the buildings. Huge, great asset for us. So our goal is to keep those positions and just enhance them. So when we get to the BCBA position, that's when we felt we were underservicing our kids. So that's an add. So every year, based on the needs, based on the input from our staff and from our central office, we're going to fill those needs incrementally as the highest priorities first.
Going on to supplies. Again, see a couple of decrease and one fairly significant increase in the reading text. Other than that, for the most part, everything is pretty stable. If you look at the historicals, we've seen what people are spending now in FY20, FY19, and FY22. It gives us a pretty good snapshot of what they need. So if they were spending more than they were asking for, we kind of bump that up. If they've spent significantly less, we bump that down. Questions there?
I think I was going to ask. I think you're going to say the same thing in different ways, but are we saying that we have, based on what we've seen in the past, we think we're going to have enough so if someone comes in the middle of the year and says, "Hey, I need this for supplies," based on prior purchases, we should have it there in the budget line item.
Yes. Again, remember that these are by school, and some years some schools don't spend all of their funds, and in April, somebody makes a request. So we'll shift funds from one area to another, possibly from school to school, but more regularly, it's from some other line item to cover those needs. So there's, in a almost $49 million budget, there is some flexibility to be able to move some funding around.
And just philosophically, that's a priority. Right, the classroom is the first priority. So we have some some stuff in central office supplies, for example, we can cut back, send that money over
You
to
have a create a paper
the elementary
outside
school.
the door.
With that,
You gotta create a paper as I walk in the high school
Yes.
door.
exactly. Yep, so that's a good example of flexibility that's built in.
Okay, and then we go to Wampatuck. And again, similarly to Cushing, again, based on class size, when we look for class sizes in kindergarten, there is a need for an additional section for first grade next year. So that's been budgeted for. And similarly in special education, based on the needs and Dr. Gilbert's requests, along with Principal Beard's request, has also been planned for. Should the need continue as we move into the summer. Other than that, you know, I think again the increase across the school is 3.42%, which is well within our overall budget increase. Questions there? Sure. No, music is here as well.
Okay. So we didn't add, it wasn't a full-time position, we didn't add it, we want to. What Dr. Kowski was talking about needs of staff, there's little changes that I want to allude to that kind of maybe buried in here if you're not paying attention. So we added 0.20, which is a day, basically a week, for our music program at the elementary level. What we were finding is that our teachers were spread really thin, bouncing from school to school, and not giving our kids the full service at every school equitably. So this was a small request, but with huge impact on allowing more kids to enjoy that, but also to for our teachers to participate and plan for extracurricular events after school and shows and things they put on there. So that was missing. So that you know, I think Thomas put that forward, and good idea for a small addition. Technically, a 0.2 adds a profound effect on our music program at the elementary program.
So for changing the down one.
Yeah, so those numbers, again, we're basing that on this year where the teachers are spending their time. But when we add the 0.2, what will happen is when we do the schedule, principals will all get together with Mr. Thomas's input and say, okay, how can we best utilize all the music teachers in all the schools to cut down on people going from school to school, and that students all get equitable access to music education. So that could change. So it's a great question. Yes, those numbers, like I said, are, and Bob started this because before the easy way and the kind of lazy way of budgeting would be put set up a separate sheet on all shared staff and just put 1.0, 0.6. We're actually trying to get in the weeds of where they're spending their time, so that we can look at each school individually and see if it's equitable. And again, with that comes a little bit of, you know, flexibility. You know, this at the end of the year will probably look a little bit different, but the total number of teachers will be the same. 0.8.
The other thing, just to point out, for clarification purpose, you look at the ELL position. It was a 0.5 last year, it's a 0.25 this year. And again, that's based on need. There was no need in two of the other elementary schools. The ELL position was split between two schools. Next year, the plan is that they split across all four positions.
There's one other one at 0.7 to 0.8. Yeah,
Reading spec.
Yeah. So so we already passed Hatterley, so I don't want to forget that because that's important as well. So another example of efficiency and what's best for kids. You know, I want to thank Julie for putting this forward. 0.7. So if you look at it, 0.2 per day in 5 days is a 1.0. 0.7. How does that fit? Doesn't. So I don't know where that came from, but we inherited it, and so that to make that teacher fit the 0.7. They're leaving and working 4 days, but they're leaving early every day at like 5 or 2 to make that point. So to add that 0.1, you know, smart way to have that teacher there for full days and not leaving early when some, and it's just amazing if you add up those 35 minutes or whatever for the course of the year. That's a whole session with students. So that's one that's in here as well. And we didn't make a big deal about putting up top, but again, small but impactful decision on adding staffing. Support kids.
Yeah, and I think that's what, I'm glad that you went back and explained that, because I do think it's a really big deal that as parents look at this,
Right.
we don't want parents worrying that we're actually losing an ELL, that what I love about these charts is that this does reflect effort in each school. Right, and not the change necessarily at the macro level, so I think it's really important that parents look at this and remember that we're a system.
Right.
And trying to use resources across buildings in the best way to help our kids. So I'm glad that you went back and clarified that a little bit.
And we'll actually like, tighten it up maybe today, I know, Monday. And this is kind of our opening game, if you will, right? We'll make some coaching adjustments here with Dr. Dutch, and we'll add that. And just so you know, one other exciting thing that was asked by the town last year at town meeting was, we had our budget available for them. They have plenty of opportunity, but we know that not all people that, especially if they're not in children's school, may not be paying attention to this. We're going to work really hard on a very thorough narrative and like explaining these things out so that a person that doesn't know the educational jargon or the situation will, so everything we're saying is now, like we do with follow-ups that are, school committee meetings, we send out those posts with details. We're going to do the same thing with the budget. When it's all done and it gets to the level of town meeting, we'll have packets, nice booklets done as part of the town meeting packet that will be, we'll have charts in, but we'll explain things very thoroughly in detail so that people can go in there comfortable and confident of what we're going to get.
Just to confirm, because I haven't had a chance to look through this whole thing, but I think given what we've just talked about, if it's not in here, but I'm guessing knowing Dr. Dutch probably is, it would be really helpful to see those like first 3 columns of the staffing at the elementary school level, so like aggregated, so that people can see that like ELL necessarily didn't change, it's just moving it from one school to another. You see what I'm saying? So
a separate slide with the total for the district.
Yeah, and I don't know if you need a table or just sort of some statements around like, ELL is the same, but we're shifting it from this school to this school, right? Just so that there's clarity on what that decrease at one is.
Tell the full story.
Yeah. I think it's tricky. Each school has different needs. There's so many similarities and yet so many differences, and just total student population, hard people across all of it. So I'm so excited about the music.
Yeah.
That has been it's such a tug of war, I think, for all of them.
Dr. You want to ask a question?
Yes.
So on
Yeah.
Counseling with the same FTE, it goes down 48,000. Paras, we go down 0.6 and it goes up 30,000. Is that strictly salary or is it anything related to
Strictly salary. The counseling, I would predict that you had someone on the top step retire and we brought someone in on step 1, and that's where you see that difference.
Well, to Carrie's last point, I want to make sure it wasn't related to the service that we're providing based on like an expertise of an individual. It's strictly salary.
Strictly salary difference.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows very clearly, not only are services to students maintained this year, they're enhanced with all of these additions that were strategically made through the district.
Supplies, again, very similar. You can see no different at Wampatuck. Science supply has decreased. The math text and the reading text and supply has increased. And we're trying, doing a good job of keeping things consistent across elementary schools. So we'll go to Gates next.
It's just freezing over here. Get our blood.
Rich on the AC up?
Like, what is that?
That's really sensitive.
Those brain breaks.
Maybe Thursday, if you're gonna break this.
So at Gates, the 2 primary additional positions are both 0.5s. One is converting a special ed teacher to a specialized reading and special ed teacher. It's moving it really from a 0.5 to a 1.0. And then 0.5 BCBA, and you'll see the other half of that position at the high school. To answer your question of where is this hours you all have. Those are the only changes, other than some additional paras at the middle school, and that's based on students transitioning and anticipated needs.
Sorry. I guess I just want to interject on the, just to, so for those who don't know, the BCBA is board certified behavior analyst. And right now the district has two, and they spend a lot of time in our elementary, potentially separate programs. But we have students outside of those programs that have needs, and they're kind of scrambling around servicing all 6 schools. So we've been band-aiding that enough the last few years, and we said enough's enough. And so we committed a full-time position there, advocated for by Dr. Gilbert. And on paper right now, the model would be that the current BCBAs would split 2 elementary schools and spend a lot of time there, so 1 each at the 2 elementaries, and then the new one would be 0.5 at middle and high school, which would provide us a lot more flexibility and a lot more services. So that's, you saw how much a 0.2 could add for music. This is a whole position for social emotional learning and support for our kids, and so we're real excited about this one. That's kind of the model right now that we're looking at. That's why it's split between the 2 schools.
Important for focus on neurodiversity and this sort of thing. BCBAs are amazing. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, Dr. Bobert's been on this for a couple of years. She's online, I think, somewhere, but she's probably dancing.
And I'm sure I 100% trust Dr. Bobert and her expertise, just for someone who's not familiar with this. Yep. When we think about student to professional ratios, is there like a state standard for, in terms of when it's 0.5 versus 1 versus, like, I guess, I don't want to call kids a caseload, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yep.
Sort of, is there a state requirement there?
So the actual IEPs dictate the service. So it wouldn't be the state, it's individualized by the child. And that's why so many of these we're very broad in predicting right now. I see it as meetings happen and things change. We want to provide the specific services at every single time.
Okay. And then so if we have a certain number of children who require a certain need, is there a threshold for how many?
It depends what it says in the IEP. Got it. So is it individual this, or is that small group this, or is it with their peers?
Thank you. I'm showing my ignorance. I just don't know IEPs. Thank you.
So we learned that. This is the questions we appreciate, because if you're not clear, the general public certainly not. So we want to make sure that. Yeah, I always board certified behavior analyst. So they write a lot of behavioral plans for students and work with teachers on that.
They're amazing people.
Yeah.
It's a hard job.
It's a hard job and a very important job. Yeah, so we're very excited about this additional role.
Right. Every kid benefits from the BCBA.
Correct.
Really being separate, essentially. Well, I just mean we have different kinds of parents doing different, not even parents, like we have school psychologists, we have adjustment counselors, we have BCBAs. I just wonder.
Dr. Bober kind of break down like special education 101, what the different roles mean and do. Yeah, that would be helpful.
What we're doing in the building.
Right.
Yeah, and how lucky we are to have such valuable and important resources. So, I don't know, as someone who doesn't know this area, I would love to learn. Selfishly.
We can add that to a future agenda. That would be a good idea.
Okay, we'll jump to supplies. I'll try to make this readable, but we'll draw your attention to big increase, which is science textbooks. There's also some increase in reading supply. But other than that, pretty consistent. And I know Heidi had mentioned textbooks before, so I'll let her speak to this before you ask your question.
Yeah. So in science, we supplies for those students. Right now, we have some textbooks or electronic textbooks that are expiring. And we want to ensure that every section of the same course has the same core resource. So the science department, Patrick Newton, have been working hard on figuring out what they need. Don't worry, Patrick, I won't call you up, but we do that. They've done a great job at making sure that so the essentials. They've also done the same thing at the high school level. And for reading supply, I'm totally impressed with the English department and with the principals of the school and middle school. A big initiative next year is that we will be benchmarking literacy levels beginning, middle, and end of the year for grades 6 through 12. So those students, unfortunately, didn't have the benefit of the phonics program that we have now, or resources that are consistent across the district. So it's really important that we see where our students are, not only for first to third grade, but make sure they're maintaining progress. So that'll be wonderful. And it's not, I want to make sure it's clear that benchmarking is not just for students who struggle. Benchmarking is for everyone. It's really important that we see, wow, this student maybe wasn't as engaged. Their lexile level is 1,300. We need to make sure the student knows that there are opportunities for advanced learning if they have the skills. And so it's literally for everyone. But I'll take it.
So I know those are names on a line item of a budget, but I heard you say, which I appreciate, the text is really, could be ebooks, it could be electronic, it could be a textbook, it's all things, even though it's a text. Supply, I heard you say benchmarking. So when I see, science supplies, I immediately think experiments and labs and things. I'm just wondering.
Sure. So supplies could be experiments and labs. Textbook is the core resource that you use to teach your curriculum. Okay. And supply is the stuff. Yes. So a supply might be an assessment, might be a pencil that
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I should write it down.
That was really helpful. That clarified. Yeah.
I think the important thing to note is that these are line items that are part of UNIS and subsequently are part of the state reporting system. Where you put things is at some degree the discretion of the district. Some make sense and others you have to try and find a place for it because there is no specific line item. So that's really kind of the explanation for why things are where they are.
And when you said the science, some of the texts are expiring, like a license that's just expiring.
Yeah, not a physical textbook, a 6-year license that we had to access certain books. But for the most part, it's calibrated to make sure that everyone has access to.
And Bob, from our perspective, from a budget, we just say, okay, every 6 years, we know we have to redo the license.
It is a tangled web that we don't want to unload right here. Every department has to make sure that they are monitoring that throughout. Sometimes we might go longer, sometimes we might go less. But what Bill mentioned earlier is we're trying to make sure each year we focus on one department.
Okay.
Because the expense is big.
That's right.
Yeah, I think I can't remember the exact number, but reading last year, at least 350. I mean, that's a significant chunk. But now we have confidence for science. They're doing the same thing. Everybody wants to be in the line next, but we have to pace ourselves.
But in short, Mr. Long, yes, we will have a plan so that, like anything else, there'll be an order, but the priorities, I think you might have to jump in certain Norway. Might have, I think you can see spattering through here that it's mostly science, but there's some history in here this year, some ELA, some math, right? The AP stuff for high school we get to it. So we're committed to making sure that the priorities are met while at the same time having a long-term plan because it is expensive.
So we'll jump to the high school. And again, we see the other half of that BCBA. There are no other additions or subtractions. Again, the music teacher is purely, I failed to account for a position that was there full time the previous year, and I didn't want to go back and change things that are historical. So you're aware of why that changed. Other than that, everything's pretty much the same. The total increase is 5.1%. Keeping in mind that BCBA is 100% increase, so that kind of skews that bottom line number a little bit. You have questions there?
The social studies teacher looks like it didn't change. There's a big 11%.
Yep, and that's purely, there's no additional staffing, it's only salary increases, yeah. And some of that may be attributable to steps.
Yeah.
Not steps and lanes.
Yeah.
So everybody in the department moved across.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Supplies at the high school. Again, you'll see the significant number. I'll jump over to this side in science. But you also see an increase in English text, science supply, and then social studies text. So I don't know if you want to provide detail to that, Heidi.
Sure. In social studies, if I'm not mistaken, 2S1, that was a high priority need that we in a common resource board that they did not have. So Steve Sweat and his team have been working on that this year. Again, the reading is going to be a high school portion of that benchmark assessment. In mathematics, we're looking at using accuracy to measure. That's the exam that typically colleges give to find out where students place. So our students will absolutely benefit to know where they are, so we can help prepare them according to us. So Liz and that department will be talking about that. And I'd like to commend the world languages department. I don't know if it's exact here how it's split up, but they've been using a STAMP assessment. I know they've used one round this year, and what that is that measures language proficiency in reading, writing, speaking. Right. All right. So that's really important for us because we offer so many years of foreign language. So we need to make sure that we have kids on track for the seal of Bible literacy. So they are fluent in that language, and we want evidence that that's happening. So I'm really proud of all the department chairs because they are really working full tilt to make sure that we're providing the quality of education that our kids can.
You do that in French next time?
No.
No box. I'll say.
Okay. So now we'll jump to special education. And this is purely there. You've seen all the special ed positions in each school. This is the district-wide expense. So you've got each line item, and you can see for the most part, they are pretty consistent. You'll see a large jump in the private school tuition, $440,000. That's a result of the state's approval of a 14% increase, which the superintendent has talked to you about previously. I think he wants to expand on that a little bit this morning. There's a decrease in collaborative tuition. Dr. Bobert and the staff in the school have created programs to allow some of those students to come back to us. So there are fewer students going to the collaborative. So that's been able to offset some of that $440,000 increase. Our supply total has gone down slightly. Our transportation has gone down slightly. So the special ed total is increasing by $187,000. The bulk of that is in that 14% increase.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch. And just for a review for those that didn't see that presentation, that the typical increase for private school tuition is about 2%, 3%. You know, it usually aligns with school budgets that we're unable to absorb. This year it went from that 2 or 3% to 14%. You can see 440,000. A lot of schools are getting, you know, their budget's getting blown up by this. I mean, that's you know, that's a, you know, 4 to 6 to 8 teachers that people might have to cut to make up for this. You know, I think we're proud of the fact that our philosophy has been we want to keep as many kids in Scituate Public Schools as possible with all their needs met. So Dr. Bober has been working with our team to make sure that we have facilities here, have supports in place that can support students with substantial needs and all needs. So that's the line below that 250, because we had a few kids come back because we enhanced our programs that can do it here. And that's a real credit to our special ed staff, you know, our principals and Dr. Bober. So that wasn't a you know, a kill shot for us. In fact, we're able to add staff while absorbing this. And I think, again, I want to give credit for all of those folks that have done the hard work on that. I know Dr. Bobert's on Zoom, and she might want to make a few comments, and we could transition over to that. I don't know if we can do that.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry my video is not working for some reason. It was in the beginning, and then I don't know what happened. But yes, I do want to thank all the staff, general ed, special ed, and administrators to make sure that we are providing services for our students, because that is the least restrictive environment. And if at all possible, we want to either keep our kids within Scituate or make sure that we have the programs to have the students return. And so we have been able to manage that private school budget accordingly. We've also had a few students who have you know, graduated or turned 22. And so that combination of the programming within our school district, as well as some of the students getting a little bit older and moving on to adult services, has helped us to manage that expected 14% increase. So I don't know if there's any other, if anyone has any questions about that or about the BCBA. I'm excited about that additional position. I think that will help us to also be able to train paraprofessionals and provide that targeted support where needed for students within their public schools and not have them stretched so thin. So I'm excited about that. But is there any questions?
No questions here. Thank you so much, Dr. Bober. We appreciate all of your hard work on all this. You know, special education is such a difficult and challenging arm of the budget, and with everything that switches so quickly. So we appreciate your diligence and just your hard work and all the staff as well.
Well, it's definitely a team effort.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll jump to curriculum. All of the things that you'll see on this page related to curriculum carry into the budget elsewhere. So some of this will be on the district page when we get to that. But we want you to see all the things that are happening to enhance our curriculum. So I will zoom in on the first half of this so that, and I'll ask Heidi to speak to any of these that you would like to speak to that are significant or any of your partnerships.
Sure. Most of the things you see at the top are system-wide programs that we use for trainings, evaluations, management, free professional development through Mass Partnership. Mass Insight is our AP support organization. Our mandated training software, that's something that is going to be tracked to the system, not through our sophisticated robots system that we currently have. And PD management software is Smart PD. Over the summer, in each department, there's work to update any curriculum items in Atlas that may need to be taken care of. So there's a little bit of money in each department that requested for that. That's not new. It's just what we do. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we'll be able to adjust some of these pieces of plans that we've received. So that's something that we'll do as well. You've already heard about the literacy, the math. Those are the repetitive items. And I already told you about the stamp testing. Tutoring is something we have to plan for. We, again, child by child, we never know until it actually happens. There are a few departments. So Mass Insight supports math, English, and science. There are some areas that are not supported by Mass Insight. So you see social studies prepared appropriately to send their teachers to advanced placement trainings. I want to say we just had a teacher who was actually invited to be a reader for advanced placement testing. Is that world language in Spanish? Yeah, so I just want to give that teacher a shout out. That's a huge achievement for our school. That's also professional development. Project Lead the Way, if you have not heard of it, I highly recommend you look it up, check out some of their videos. It's a wonderful, structured engineering curriculum. Patrick has been working with that for pathways.
Yes. Biomedical.
Biomedicals.
And I just want to draw your attention to the total increase, $41,000. You recall on the early slides, there was a 113% increase in curriculum. That includes textbooks. There's over $300,000 of textbook expenditure, plus this $41,000, which gives you that significant increase. Athletics, this again is a snapshot. You can see the FY23 expenses and the FY24, as well as the change. I want to draw your attention to the athletic contracted services and what I think is a significant increase, $35,201. And that is primarily as a result of an increase in ice time. And Scott is here if you have specific questions about anything related to athletics. Yeah, the cost of ice time, not the amount of ice time. Sorry. But I don't know if you have questions here.
I have questions about the increase in athletics salary, including like did we add coaches? And
no, the increase is in the past we have funded based on, we've budgeted based on our known costs. This year, because of the new contract, there are positions in the contract that are freshmen and JV positions that often don't fill because there aren't enough student athletes participating at that level. Additionally, there are now 3 lanes for coaches, lane 1, step 1, step 2, step 3. We've budgeted all of those at step 3, and we've budgeted for every one of the positions. So this is at the greatest possible cost is what we budgeted for, in case every position is needed because of the desire for students to participate in sports. So that's why you're seeing that increase.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, it's conservative budgeting because it's the best worst case scenario, I guess, and all the programs are filled, which we want, and that happens, and we kind of go back to the old way of budgeting on what we had this year, and it goes over. Now you're short, so we have that's a smart way to budget. We have a push there so that we can. And I know there's some excitement for some. I think every year it looks like we had girls golf this year, and now I'm hearing some rumblings, and I think you know, Mr. Payne's in the audience, doing a real good job of supporting student interest. And I think at the next meeting, you might be hearing from him on another potential new sport coming down the pike, boys spring volleyball. And so huge interest there. So exciting things happening in athletics, and the budget reflects that. But the ice time went up. New ownership came in and just jacked the prices up. So that's it. And yeah, and the official fees go up every year too. That's included here as well. Scott, anything to add that we haven't covered?
No, the ice time is a significant issue, and the problem is that there just aren't enough facilities in the area for us to be able to say, all right, well, we're not going to skate here, we're going to go skate over at this facility because they're all booked.
And they know that.
And they know that.
Wow.
So this company that took over Mock Arena also took over, also now runs Rock Break and Fog. So all of the schools that skate those facilities. Unfortunately, have these severe increases.
So our plan is when Dr. Dutch retires and becomes a millionaire, he can build a rink in the Scituate, claim it after him.
Yacht invested.
Yeah. Yacht first and then ice rink.
I think a rink up on that hill, if that building doesn't exist up there.
Yeah.
So it would be beautiful.
Will you work with Bob July 1st on that?
Sure. Yes.
Good luck.
In a pool, sorry, yes. Oh, the 50-meter I was told, yes. I learned a lot about our swim team at the last meet. Especially not to sit in the front row.
Yeah.
My eyes are still bleeding from the chlorine.
Okay. So this brings us to the district office, and there's not a lot of detail here financially, because these are each individual positions, but we wanted you to get a sense of all of the positions that are within the district office. And you can see the administrator total, and then the administrative assistant positions as well, and then the total salary for the department. We'll jump to the supplies, which are the interesting component here. And again, these are state line items, but a lot of this comes out of the other departmental budgets. Most of these are cost centers from elsewhere. School committee clerical is the secretary for school committee who takes your minutes. Supplies, you can see that the conference travel has gone up a significant percentage, although the dollars are not as significant. Mr. Burkhead, I think. That.
Yes, thank you. And this is a credit to our team, our school committee, our central office team, being more involved in attending conferences, excuse me. Not only that, but being asked to present. I think all of us have at one point presented, and I know Chairperson Brandolini and Ms. Driscoll are presenting at national level down in Florida this year. So that's just a credit to great things happening in our professional development. So again, in the big picture, not a lot of money, but an increase nonetheless, and we anticipate that to continue to happen. So we wanted to budget for that. And we encourage any school committee members in our central office team continue to look out if they're interested in presenting, and MASC has opportunities. We want to be the district that goes out and leads and shares the great things we're doing here. So that's that line item.
And then, the school district travel is the superintendent, my office, the assistant superintendent, my office potentially. And again, because they're going to more conferences and presenting at national conferences, you're seeing the same increase there similarly. Our school copier, there's an increase in that cost. School district contract services. There were many things that were never budgeted for that are now part of the budget that we're including in contracted services, like school bundle, which is the website developer and management, as well as all the communications that you get come out of that software, School Spring, ClassLink, all of those, as well as consultants that the district uses that we have not budgeted for in the past, because we just kind of absorbed it elsewhere in the budget prior.
And this is one thing I'd like the consultant piece, give some examples for folks that see that, because I know sometimes you can think, well, we're paid to do this stuff, and yes, we are, but there's also a right time when you want an outside pair of eyes coming in, especially with a new team in our third year. So I think the example this year, the equity audit, I think it was very important to have an outside group of professionals come in, and that was extremely helpful. It shines some light on some of our own internal biases, to use a related term there, on what we're seeing. The same is true with strategic plan, which is a huge undertaking. Again, outside group helping just to facilitate this, but both of those are our community doing the work. Those folks just help guiding that work. So that's that's plugged in there. And next year in that line item is something that I hadn't brought up yet. It goes along with social emotional wellness, is staff wellness, and we budgeted monies in there to bring somebody in to work with us to create a very unique and innovative idea, is coaching for teachers. And we want to have that person come in, work with us to develop what that looks like, to support our teachers, and then build the trainer models where our teacher leaders can then teach other teachers, and with the coaches support. The only kind of similar examples I can draw for you are the new superintendent induction program, which I'm a member of, and I have benefited greatly from. Principals and assistant principals have this through the Mass Association of School Superintendent Principals, administrators, excuse me, but teachers don't really have it. And I want to thank Dr. Bukowski, who's been working with us on brainstorming some ideas on this with Ms. Driscoll and I. We're really excited about it. We wanted to try to get it in this year, but it's so new, and this, and I think last week in preparation for this, I reached out to all the superintendents on what's out there, what are you doing? I didn't get one response. It's just not happening, and it should be. So I shared this with our teacher union, and I want to share this today publicly with our staff, that's something that's unique and innovative that we're committed to in this budget to support our teachers. It's something new and exciting about building a coaching model where they can be coached and supported, and then branching that out over time so that eventually our own teacher leaders will be running that from within. And so that, I just wanted to point that out. And then the transportation line, that's kind of in there, that's in a weird place, but is where it needs to be. I want to bring up recovery high schools. If you're not familiar with those, they support our students. They may have some substance issues, along with and/or social emotional issues. And a lot of times, what I've seen with those is they're reactionary, meaning we may have a student that has that issue or gets in trouble at school or is failing at school, and then we send them off to those places in collaboration with those principals in those groups or directors. And what I found out this year, we partnered with one specifically called Independence Academy in Brockton. We have students, have sent students, and it's always kind of after the fact. And one thing that is not supported is transportation. So now you're telling a parent that, okay, you have to go to Brockton now to take your child there for supports, but you have to find your own transportation. And that's a deal breaker for many parents and caregivers. It's something, in asking around in to other surrounding towns and what folks do, nobody's paying for that. One by one, they'll work something out each year as case by case. So we experienced that this year, and I just wasn't thrilled with it. So we're going to commit, I think it's $25,000 to transportation for that program. Spoke with the principal personally, and he was pretty excited about it. And hopefully this budget is eventually approved, and that will be approved. So in essence, that in the whole scheme of things, small contribution, we now proactively can work with families that are dealing with this issue and have that option before the kid fails. and they can go there, and when they have transportation, and Scituate can take the lead in the South Shore and in the state by being one of the first to support this, and I think it'll spread. And I want to thank Anne-Marie Galvin, who's a superstar and someone who really advocated for this, really educated me on it, and brought to light the need for this. And I know she's a supporter of this, but I want to thank her for her support, her help, her guidance on this. And thank you, Anne-Marie, for making this happen. But that's something I also wanted to show that we're committed to, that I think that's really needed and is going to support a lot of our students that may be struggling in their families proactively, as opposed to reactively with a small investment in transportation.
And I'd just like to add one little thing. When it comes to the coaching model, I want to give a shout out to Lisa McGuire and her Mass Insight team. They worked with Mass Insight, so AP teachers have the opportunity to have a coach included them. And I don't know if you remember, but last year we actually had one of the English teachers who worked with a coach come in saying it was the most amazing, glowing review. So we do have a tiny bit of that, but we're hoping to make it global. But I wanted to give a shout out to Dr. McGuire and the team.
I had a question, just a comment. On the, James and I were quietly trying to figure this out. The school committee, the teacher, I guess the professional line.
Yeah.
What is that?
So within the contract, teachers are reimbursed for college courses that they take.
Oh, okay.
So that is.
Yeah.
You're not getting that. Oh, you're not getting it anyway. Yeah, so there's no change. That's a contractual amount.
Okay. The comment is, and Bill's leaving, so I'll say it anyway. I'm just really proud of our district leadership, and just really proud of the district. When I look at this budget, it really does feel like a values-based budget. When I first went to Superintendent Burkett about coaching, there wasn't even any hesitation. He was very interested, and we've been brainstorming, and I have the great privilege of working with lots of different teachers really around the country, and no one's doing this. And I hope our teachers and staff that are here know how much the school committee values the work that everybody does. And we just don't think we do enough to support you, especially coming out of the peak of the pandemic. And so we're hopeful that this coaching model is really an investment in your well-being as individuals, because as Heidi said, we've had glimpses of coaching. This isn't your run-of-the-mill instructional coaching. This is like professional development. This is well-being. This is like anything you want it to be in that space. So I'm just wanted to say that it's really excited about that. So.
Just real quickly to explain significant changes, the minus 100% and then 227,111% increase. These, like the curriculum development and curriculum contract service, were holdover line items from previous administrations that we've finally removed. This was a salary that should never be in this line item or in this side of the budget at all. Same is, there was another 68,000 somewhere else that was similar to that we've already gotten rid of. Severance is the teacher sick leave buyback when they retire. It's never been in the budget, so we wanted to account for that because it is an expense. And the amount can vary from year to year depending on how many and who is retiring. Superintendent already mentioned the 100% increase in contracted transportation, which is targeted towards Independence Academy. The $271,000 increase in curriculum supply. Previously, those supplies were divided elsewhere in the budget, a lot of times within building line items, but they're district expenses. So, plus we've increased those expenditures pretty significantly. I mean, you've got your benchmarking, your stamp testing, a lot of the digital resources are all within that line item. And what you saw on the curriculum page carries into this. So those are the only, I mean, building maintenance supply, custodial supply, those are some things that costs have just gone up. That's why you're seeing those increases. So I don't know if there are other questions, but anticipated those and answered them already.
More of a curiosity, the substitute teacher line, are you just using your expertise and experience, our historical data? Are you thinking about it in the way that you described the athletic coaches where you have lines for particular? Can you just talk about your thinking around that?
The substitutes it's based on historical data. Yeah,
Okay.
it's based on usage. And
Is that pretty stable over time?
it has steadily gone up.
Yeah.
For the last 2 years, it's stayed consistent. And I think it's safe to say that we think that number is going to begin to go down because the attendance has started to improve.
Okay.
So we're seeing improvements there and needing fewer substitutes, and it's not a function of not being able to get the substitutes. It's more a function of fewer people around daily basis. Transportation. Again, you've got van drivers and bus drivers. Our routes are pretty consistent as far as number. We lost a van driver. I budgeted for the 4th van driver, but the actual FTEs currently, and I'm not sure that I'll be able to find one, are only budgeted, are only identified as 3, but know that it's budgeted for 4 positions. We are fortunate. We've had 3 people. I don't know if you've seen the sign out on the Driftway for bus drivers. We've had 3 applicants and contracting to train them, and so hopefully they'll be ready for next fall for those that are retiring. Technology. You recall earlier, the superintendent spoke to the significant increase. Historically, this number down here, subtotal contracted services, has been about $85,000 to $95,000. We've done a lot. There are 3 items that focus on the security, cybersecurity that were mentioned. One is Duo, which is the multi-factor authentication. Barracuda and Sophos are back-end things that are behind the scenes that control traffic and who can access the network and prevent those bad actors from getting in and being able to do things that we don't want them to. The rest of these are licenses that are in some cases are new. The Google Suite, we've only adopted that a couple of years ago. So these are just examples. You've also got salaries up here. That's all positions within the IT department. Questions there?
It's important for investment in the area.
Agreed.
School, cyber.
Right.
Security.
Yeah.
And the cost.
School.
Cost is over.
And a lot
No
of
budget
times,
for that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge hit.
Better to be ahead of it.
public entities are often targets because they don't have the updated protections. ECC, pretty consistent with the number of teachers and the expenses there. Those are cost of living and steps in place increases. So our total budget, these are all of our expenses. I'll go through this so that when you're looking at it, when you can't sleep, to help you put yourself to sleep, you can
Just replay this.
know what this is. So you've got your schools listed. It's color coded by general ed salaries, special ed, which is both special ed teachers and paras, and custodians across all the buildings, the administrative assistants, Administrators, and any place that there's just a single administrator, again, those were whited out. And then supplies. You go across, you've got your total by school. You've got some of those outliers within special education, transportation, and out of district costs. Longevity, which is a district expense, is included here. And within athletics, you've got league fees, transportation, and officials, which are standalone to bring us to, you go across, you'll have our total as well. So you get to the bottom line, $48,936,522. And with any luck, the next page where you have your revenue, the bottom line matches, which it does. But as was mentioned earlier, the budget is just that, it's a budget. Things will change. The bottom line won't change, but where we're spending that may change over time. And you can see the total revenue increase is 3.53%. I'll go through these in a little bit of detail. You can see we've got our actuals for FY21 and FY22, what was budgeted this year, what our actuals are thus far this year, knowing that some of this revenue is still going to come in. For grants, it is what we've been told we're getting. So these numbers are not likely to change, which is why what's proposed for FY24 is the same as what was the actuals for FY23. These numbers down here are our revolving accounts. These are receipts that we receive for non-resident tuition. So non-resident tuition are our special ed programs that we charge for, and other districts send students to us. You can see that last year we budgeted pretty significant amount. This is half of the year. We've gotten $163,000. So those folks pay quarterly. So I'm confident we're going to hit this target. ECC receipts always come in slowly, but we got pretty. We did a pretty good. These are actuals. I'm sorry. We did come pretty close to what was targeted. Athletics will be dropping that off pretty soon because we're not getting any more revenue. Bus fees, we got a little bit more than we had budgeted for in FY23. Sports events, what we charge for people to come to football, basketball. Primarily, those are the only sports that we charge for. Our bus leases revenue that comes from the town. We put it here, even though it's an expense on our expense side. So a revolving subtotal you can see is up about $100,000. The bulk of that increase, well, it's up 100,000 from where we are currently, not where we anticipate ending up. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is a significant increase in FY23 for circuit breaker. We're getting $1.6 million this year. So we anticipate getting the same next year, which is a lot more than we budgeted. Fortunately, that'll allow us to prepay some expenses and absorb some of that 14% increase as well. So I don't know if you have questions about either the total expense side on the previous slide or this slide. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Go back to the previous slide. Yeah. Total.
The bottom line total. What do you have?
I have 48,934.
I don't know why. I'd have to look at what's why your book is different.
Oh, why is it? Where's that?
But it's $2,000 to good. So
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
We might have made a change after those.
Okay.
So we'll have to update that.
I'll actually take a look and see. I have a feeling it is in the technology supply line. And I think that's actually 250.
Really just
Any other questions?
So if you're gonna train whoever's the place. I would think that you're super spoiled with the beauty of such okay.
And I think, that's a great question, and I want to thank Dr. Dutch as well, and a few people here as we continue to wrap this first day. He's been an unbelievable resource, brought transparency, clarity, but things we didn't even get to today. We all know about the buildings and the projects going on, multiple roof projects, new school building projects in and of itself is a commitment. So all those things, we're making our district better every day. So thank you, Dr. Dutch. This is your last Saturday budget hearing. So congratulations to you. And, sorry, I had to leave for part of it. I went outside to warm up and back. But I also want to thank our, our team. And Bob doesn't do it alone, and certainly we don't do it alone. I think why we can go in such detail and be so honest about our budgets is because of the people here in this room are, our department chairs and coordinators, cost center leaders, central office team, and our principals. They work hard together to get us granular details. So round of applause for them. Thank you. And it makes our job easier. And then when we have to say, tighten your belts, that, last year we had to do that, and that's sacrifice it, but still the expectation is still a high quality education for our kids. They pull through on that. So, it's a real team effort. I want to thank Seth and Sam today for coming in on a Saturday, and for those, those of you that want, live behind the scenes and how the sausage is made. We didn't have internet this morning because the cabling literally froze here. So we 10 minutes before we got the hotspots going. Sam's using his own personal phone for a hotspot. His battery's almost at 0 from what I understand. So send the bill to Bob and take care of it out of his own pocket.
Yeah.
And just the good committee for asking great questions and offering terrific feedback on how we can best communicate this out to the public and make life easier for them to understand. And we're looking forward to Monday to tighten up a few things and on the feedback you gave us today, and we'll make sure that's included Monday, and then looking forward to the select board.
That's the budget. Obviously, if you look at what is in the binder and that prompts a question, just email, give me a call, whatever. Happy to provide answers.
All right. It is now time for public comment. So, anybody like to make a public comment and help it? No question at all, but we'd love to hear you. I don't get that on. This is your time. Whatever you want.
Is there a good place to stand? I just want to thank Mr. Burkhead and Lisa McGuire and Dr. Dutch and everyone that's been a part of bringing the request to include transportation to the Recovery High School to the regular budget. It's my dream come true. And I would be happy to take some time to invite Ryan Morgan to do a presentation to the school committee when there's ever time in the agenda, and also to let folks know we have a field trip planned with some administrators and central office to go visit Independence Academy in Brockton on March 6th. But we can also schedule other times if those are better for school members, but it's a very special place. I have been involved there somewhat for about the same 10 years that I've been involved in Scituate PACs here in Scituate, and it's really, really magical. It's unfortunate when kids need a location like that, but it happens. It has consistently happened every time it's come up. I explained to Mr. Burkhead that it's very rare that we can convince a young person who has a substance use disorder to discontinue their use, to even identify sometimes that their use is a problem that is impacting their learning and their life and their relationships. So it's always a sad time and often a crisis time when we get there. But when we have a student that's ready for that and wants that intervention in that special setting, it breaks our hearts when we can't get them there. We've done all the things to get them there, very creative things. Shout out to Erica Brady, who came up with a ingenious mom idea this year, and it shouldn't be that way. And I just really am so grateful every time that I've been here when we have to, flag something that this is one of those gaps. I'm just so grateful to Scituate Public Schools for recognizing that and for doing the right thing for kids. It really always happens. And that started at the beginning. I will stop by Greg Ranieri, my co-chair at Scituate Facts from the beginning. 12 years ago when we started, when I was ringing up the old police chief and everybody and the old superintendent, and someone finally kicked the can to Greg Ranieri, who was the lucky dog who took my meeting, and has been taking meetings with me ever since. So he said yes. And we've been, we do Friday afternoon meetings and write a grant and get a very competitive grant from the Centers for Disease Control to do evidence-based prevention. But since that day, way back in 2013, Scituate Public Schools has been the shining star of our community effort. So I'm a town employee collaborating all the people, all the, the clergy and the parents and the treatment providers. But it has always been, I get choked up because it has always been Scituate Public Schools that comes up first and listens and hears and responds with the right thing, from curriculum and SEL, psychoeducational support groups, creative solutions, especially at the high school and the middle school. It's just, as a parent of 4 teenagers, it means so much. So I'll stop. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right, and Marie, I think it's true, and I think even as Mary pointed out too, this budget just reflects very student-centered, family-oriented. Everything is for kids, and the educators that support our kids, staff administrators. It's just a reflection of our community, and very much appreciated. So all of our gratitude for all the. Anything else before we wrap up?
Nicole, I'm here. This is Peter.
I didn't want to call you out because I thought if you wanted to say something, you would.
I was just listening to everything, waiting for my opportunity, I guess.
Peter Gates, you have the floor.
No, I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, I know that Superintendent Burke had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that the real partner in this is the town of Scituate. The financial forecast process, which helps to dictate the majority of our budget, really helps to benefit the schools and our students and our staff. In reality, I think I say this every year, but one of the big factors in providing the funds that we need is a result of what we call this new growth. So people are, I guess, moving to Scituate and or their new homes being built. So I know some people may not like the, I guess, increased number of homes being built in Scituate, but it ultimately does help to benefit our schools. So I wanted to thank the town and the Financial Forecast Committee and I guess providing that formula and allowing us to receive the funds that are required to run the best school district in the world. And then I guess ultimately I want to say, as a school committee member, this is my 6th year on the school committee, and I think finally we received a budget that was fully transparent, really helps to benefit all of our learners, all of our staff, and the entire community as a whole. So I want to thank Superintendent Burkhead, Dr. Dutch, the whole administrative staff that helped complete this initial budget phase. So I just wanted to say that throughout this, and I agree with all the funds and how they're being spent at this point. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody else?
Move to adjourn at 52.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, Long.
Yes.
Yes. Lindblom. Yes. Yes. Gates.
Yes.